Hey guys, welcome back to another Logic Pro X tutorial. It's an updated version of a previous Logic Pro X tutorial that I have available online. So by no means is this a duplicated video or a duplicate video of that video. I would still recommend checking out the other video. I'm not going to cover the same things in this video. It's more of an extended version, an updated 2021 version of Logic Pro X for beginners. Just like in the previous Logic tutorial, I will make my Logic session that I'm working on available for free with a link in the description, so you can download it and go along with the things I'm using and use it in practice. I would recommend doing that while I go through the tutorial so you can kind of do the things I'm doing in practice while we're learning. This is going to be a really long video, which is why I've time-stamped all the relevant sections and topics in the description. So if you don't want to watch the full thing, just go to the relevant timestamps in the description and skip to the section that's most appropriate to you. But I will be going into some type of chronological order with the sections that I'm going to talk about right now. So section 1, we'll talk about building a song structure and some key organization things you want to have place in your Logic session. So these things include like tempo, song key. Section 2 would be talking about plugins and virtual instruments. So what are plugins? Where are they located? Do you need to buy plugins, or do you need to buy virtual instruments, or can you just use the ones in Logic? And are they professional? Are they good? Section 3 is using samples. So how do you use samples? How do you bring them into your Logic session? Section 4 would be editing audio and Midi. I did touch on this in the last tutorial, but I did want to mention some things that I thought I was missing. Section 5 would be talking about mixing, busing, and outputs. I'm not going to get too deep on mixing because I think that deserves a video of its own. Section 6 is kind of like a little bonus section where I want to talk about different amateur mistakes that a lot of amateurs make just for starting out with Logic or music production, songwriting, whatever. Section 7 will talk about some cool effects and plugins for beginners like pitch correction, autotune, and automation as the 3 big ones. And then section 8, we're going to package what we've made in this tutorial and bounce it, and then that file will be available for you. That whole Logic session file will be available for you in the description. Let's jump into section 1, building a song structure and some key organization things you want to have in your Logic session. First thing off the bat, 2 really important things that you want to have a good idea of before you actually start your song or before you start some ideas of your song are tempo and key. They're really 2 fundamentals of music. Tempo is how fast your song is, and the key is the key of your song. So whether it's in like a C sharp minor or a D major, we want to know what this is before we start making music, because it will be difficult to change these things later. Not so difficult if we're just working in Midi, but it just helps us set the foundation so we can kind of get off on the right track. Tempo is set at right up at the top here, and we can double click and write any number we want here, like 100, or we can also click and drag down or up to find the desired tempo very quickly. So if I want that like just at 110, I can just click and drag down to 110 and then let go. And then the key of the song is important because Logic will take that into consideration when we are actually playing instruments, the built-in Logic virtual instruments. And if we tell Logic that our song is in D major, for example, then Logic will help us find the right notes in that key. So that's really helpful down the line. By the way, if you don't have this huge custom bar here, and you see something smaller, like for example, like this, that's just because I've customized my control display. You can go to this drop-down window here and then choose what you would like in the display, whether that's the beats and project or any of these. I like to have a custom display where it's like a lot of information because I'm using a monitor, so I have the space available. Moving on, we come into Logic as in an empty session. Usually we're in the headspace of we have a song, an idea, and we're ready to record it and ready to go, or we come into an empty Logic session and we don't have any ideas. We just want to kind of brainstorm and generate ideas. So Let's talk about the first way where we have a song idea, we have a band, or we have a guitar part we want to record or a piano part, and then we want to sing over. We know what we're doing. Let's first talk about it in the approach of that and go over some key organization topics for that perspective. And then let's talk about we don't have any ideas and how can we use Logic to our advantage with the tempo and key that we've chosen to get ideas quickly using live loops and the step sequencer. The first way, if you know exactly what you want to record, then load up whatever instrument you want to get started with, whether that's an audio track where it's already default here. We can arm the track and we can start recording our vocal, whether we want you to use this microphone right here, or we want to start with a software instrument track, go up here, track, add software instrument, and then we can open up our library here with this folder window, or we can press Y on our keyboard and that snaps the library open. And then we can choose any software instrument available to us. For example, Steinway grand piano, and I have my Midi keyboard right in front of me. Press record or test the piano out here. And I can quickly just press record and throw down ideas like this if I wanted to, or get my idea that I want to for my song right away. The other instruments we have available to us are drummer tracks. If you are a drummer and want to start out with a beat, we can add a drummer track where we can quickly get a beat that's made for us in the tempo that we've chosen, 110. And we can use this beat right here. Let's scroll that up to the top, use this simple beat, and record our piano over it. Let's just do a C major, A minor, or let's do a C major, G, A minor, F. We can record that right over our drums here. If that was the progression of our song, we're kind of off to the races with building a foundation for our song. Let's say we wanted to start out with a guitar track that is plugged into our audio interface. If you're not exactly sure what an audio interface is, these are the types of things that I'm kind of skipping over a little bit more quickly, and because these are the things that I've mentioned in the last Logic Pro X tutorial, so perhaps it's better to check out the first Logic Pro X tutorial and then come back to this one. Where organization comes into play, and these are the things I want to mention in this section, this marker section. So I'm going to press Y to snap this section up on the left to get more space. And then I'm just going to narrow in our session here. So default, it happens to be around like 90 bars here. I'm just going to snap this to about 50 and then zoom in. And then it's going to clean up our session here, and our window here is going to be much smaller. And this drop down here is where we have our markers, the arrangement, our signature, and our tempo. So this is kind of like the metadata to our track. And I want to talk about markers. Markers are going to help you get structure and organization around your track. You can click into a marker and type things like intro. For example, if we have a 4-bar intro, and then maybe here we have a verse, I'm going to press plus again and then write verse 1. And maybe we have, after 4 bars, we have a pre-chorus, so I can type in another marker, type in pre, and then let's say we have a chorus at bar 13. I'm going to type in chorus. And then say we have an 8-bar chorus. Then I can, if we have another verse, I can copy this verse by doing Command C and then going to bar 21 and doing Command V. I can copy that marker. And by default, the last marker will just extend forever. So let's say we have a simple structure. I'm going to copy the pre again. I'm going to copy the chorus again. And let's say we have a bridge at bar 18. So I'm going to make another marker, call it bridge. And then another marker at, let's say, bar 45 to have a chorus. So I'm going to just Command C this second chorus and have it there. So you notice that our session view here is too small. So what we want to do is just click on this little arrow and drag it out to where you want it to be. So for example, I'm gonna just drag it out to bar 65 and zoom in. So this is the end of our song here. So we can just do like maybe an outro. So this gives us an idea of structure, and I like to have these all in the same color. So I would choose the choruses and hold shift. And then I would type in Option C on my keyboard and then choose a color for these. And I would do the same thing for the verses, which would be, let's do that, blue, pre's, maybe the outro, the bridge, and the intro could all be similar colors. And I will double click into verse 1 and just do verse 2, chorus 2, chorus 3, pre 2. So that gives us a much clear visual of what we're now trying to build with our song. And we can snap this up, and then it's still there at the top, color coded. So if we did, for example, we had the song in mind, and we know that this piano part is in our intro and will likely be in our verse sections, we can drag and copy it to those sections very quickly. I can even loop this for the whole song if I wanted to have that piano part be the whole song. Or if it's just the intro, verse, pre, and the chorus is different, then I can hold down Option with my keyboard, and then on my mouse I'm going to click, and then this little plus sign shows up. You can see it there. And now I can just drag this anywhere and let go of my mouse, and then it's made a copy for me. So let's say I want it here, and then it's in the bridge, the same thing. I'm going to hold down Option, click and drag with the mouse, and let's say it's the outro too. And then we can do the same thing for our drums. We can drag it like this. We can also be double clicking and editing our drums with this quadratic here quickly. Let's say for the verse it's more simple and soft without any hi-hats. But then in our chorus it's more loud and complex with hi-hats. And then we can click and drag on our choruses here. So these kind of shortcuts of Option and the mouse clicks, quick shortcuts to use to get song ideas quickly, and we can be referencing our song structure at the top here just to give us an idea of like where we're going and what we're working with. I find that really helps me. Then if we want to continue on filling out our chorus, we can pop in our chorus here. Let's say our chorus more holds down a G chord to an A minor. So I can just go to my Midi keyboard here that's plugged in right in front of me. I can press R on my keyboard at bar 13 here where the chorus is, and I'm just going to pop that in here. Okay, so something like that. I'm going to double click in and just clean that up, because noticed how it's cut off this first bar here, and also nothing is quantized. So I've double clicked to bring my editor up, and these are the MIDI notes that I've played. So I'm going to quantize, so Command A to highlight everything, and then I'm going to quantize by 1/16th note. 1/16th note is going to snap it into the nearest 16th bar that I've played closest to. So if you're going to play something and then quantize it, it's safe to say that you can quantize by 1/16th and you'll be okay. And I'm just going to get rid of some of these notes here that I played poorly. And then here is I want this to start at bar 13. So there's a couple things I can do. Just let me snap down my editor. So what I like to do is I have 3 different toolbars. We'll get into more of the tools in editing audio section, but I have the scissors tool on my right click. So when I right click on my mouse, I can bring up these scissors, and then I can quickly cut that and delete it. We'll get into more of the tools in the editing section. Let's get back into the first section though of more song organization. As you build lots of tracks and it starts getting maybe disorganized because you're not trying to get, you're just trying to move quickly, you might want to pause when you want to take a bit of a break and do something a little bit easier. Then you can go through your tracks and just edit the names of the tracks, maybe put some labels on the tracks like vocal track, or yeah, piano. This is already nicely labeled, but you can see if you had if you kept adding audio tracks, and I'm just going to press Command D a bunch of times, but let's say you had multiple audio tracks and it can just get messy after a while. Then if this had a track here, if there was actually something here, do Option C and make the guitar audio the same colors. If you had multiple guitars, guitar chorus, let's say, or and then you had a guitar bridge, let's say these were on different tracks, or you had a lead guitar section. So we can right click and choose different icons for your guitar sections. Maybe they're all the same guitar, that's fine too. The same icon. Just drag the vocal down. It's nice to now actually group these tracks together. And how you do that, you can do a shortcut, which is Shift Command D, or you can go to track and create a track stack here, which is just Shift Command D. All the shortcuts are available in the menus here, and I do recommend popular things you do, learning the shortcuts. There's two options, a folder stack and a summing stack. For our purposes as a beginner, we're just going to talk about folder stacks because it just kind of groups them together in a folder and really nothing more than that. A summing stack is a bit more of an intermediate advanced technique where you put them in a folder, but then in this folder you can apply different effects to that folder, which apply to all the instruments. We'll touch a little bit on that in the busing and output section of this video. As an example, we would just put these in a folder stack, and then we would call them guitars, and change this icon again, guitars. So now in this little drop-down window, we have our guitars, and it's neatly organized. These type of organization techniques are really helpful as you start to build out more of a song. And don't get too caught up on these, like I was saying at the beginning, because they're not super important when you're just starting out with a few tracks. So let's move on to the second perspective of this video, where if you go into Logic, an empty Logic session, and you don't have any ideas, how can you leverage Logic to find ideas right away? And this was a big thing that Logic made a change with in their big update 10.5.1. This was a new Logic update. Live loops and the step sequencer being a big one. And these really help to brainstorm ideas and get ideas just out there, and then pick and choose the ideas that can work for your vibe or your song. Just to clean up some things right now, I'm going to highlight these all, and I'm going to do backspace, delete, and I'm going to delete my guitars too right now. Just delete. What I'm going to show you now is the live loops section. And so these two icons are important here. This blue icon is what we're looking at. It's this session window here. And I can click that off and it disappears, right? And now we're given this whole new view. And then I can click it back on and it comes up on this half. So you can see this grid is this section, and then this session kind of horizontal bars is this section. When I have one off, I don't see it, obviously. And when I have them both on, I see both. Typically, it's just been this view. You kind of record tracks horizontally, and you get your ideas out this way. The big update with this grid view, these live loops, is where I'm going to show you now, is you can record pieces of audio in these little squares that all are based around your tempo. Okay, so the question you might be asking is, great, how do we actually get ideas if we're just starting out with a blank template, right? To clean these things up, I'm going to delete these tracks. So I'm doing Command Backspace. These are regions on this track. There are regions on this track. Do you want to delete them? Yes, I do. Same thing with the grand. And now I have blank slate. Okay, so I'm going to start with an audio track. Gonna create. If you have an idea of a melody in your head, just go ahead and press in this square and you can record audio. So now we are recording audio in this square here. Because it's red, you can see it's recording. You see nothing's happening on this side in our kind of traditional view. But we are actually just recording ideas in here. And we can stop. Now we have that little snippet of audio in here. And we can just go and record other pieces of audio in this section. This is the idea of live loops, where you have one track with different ideas in these little squares. And then over time, we can create multiple tracks with multiple different ideas. And then we can pick and choose the ideas we like and then record them in to our traditional session view here. If that sounded like gibberish to you and everything, that's okay. We're going to do it from scratch with a simple example. So let's just delete these. And let's start with a bass of something, whether that's a piano progression that you record or a live loop, an actual Apple loop, sorry. So I'm going to start with an Apple loop, and I'm going to open up our Apple loop section here. I can press L, I believe L on my keyboard. Sorry, no, what's the shortcut for Apple loops? I don't know, so I'm going to press my question mark. And O, it's O. So I'm going to turn off the information bar and just press O. So this opens up the loop browser. I can also just go and click here. We don't have to be that lazy. I'm going to just X this orange thing to get back to a clean filter. And I'm going to look for a guitar loop. And I'm going to just scroll through here and search. You can click and it gives you highlights. I'm going to search for a guitar under guitars, and I'm going to do genre indie. And feel free to choose any of these, any filter you want. And then if you know, okay, I want to start a song that's a high tempo and it's more happy. So you might say, well, you might search for filter by tempo and then look for major keys because you want it to be more happy. Or you can also just filter all scales in the major key in a certain time signature, even if you know that. For our case, I'm open to happy, sad right now, so I'm just going to do any. And then I'm going to just choose one of these. Let's just go with this one. So you can click and drag to here. And let's actually just get into, let's remove that view and just narrow in on this view. So if we play this, we hear that guitar loop now. What we can do now is add a drum track. Let's say new software instrument drum track. Oops, sorry, new drummer track. Let's delete this software instrument by doing Command Backspace. And inside this drummer track, we can plus, and then we can just add the similar thing that we were doing in the other view. We're gonna just use the quadratic here, maybe turn up the hats, and then I'm gonna press play on my drum kit while that's happening, and that's going to come in at the next bar. So this is where tempo and key were really important. Tempo, because we are locked in at 120 right now. If that's too fast, let's just say 110. When you play the square, it doesn't come in right away. And this is because everything is locked into the beats and the tempo. So I'm in a 4/4, 110 tempo. So that means I'll show you with the click on. So this loop here, when I play it, you can hear the tempo, right? You can hear the click. When I press the drums here, you see it came in right on the first beat of the next bar, you would say. You can fill these squares up with different loop ideas, drums, synths, bass, guitars, vocals. You have little vocal ideas you want, and then just be clicking these around to see what works with one another. So let's add some more loops to give you an idea. Open up our loop browser again. So let's add some more. Let's add a lead guitar. Let's just close down our editor by pressing E. Let's add the disco trance guitar. Let's add the disco trance lead guitar. And I'm bringing them all in at 110. You can just add this for fun to get some ideas. We'll also copy this bluebird, or we can just press plus on these. And I'm going to double click and just edit this one to be a bit more loud and complex. I'm going to add another one. This is, I'm going to do super simple and soft with claps. And another one here, loud and simple with a tambourine. Now I'm going to click some of these and see, like this guitar here, does it work best with these, this one, or this one? Let's find out. That's cool. All right, let's try this one. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try this one. You can turn the guitar down because it's too loud right now. I want to hear the drums a bit better. Okay, let's try this one. And let's say, you know what, this drum set is cool, but I kind of like this loop, let's say. See how the loops changed, but the drum set is just continuing. Everything is disconnected in a way. Actually, not in a way, it's true, they are all disconnected. Everything is disconnected, but it's all matched up around tempo. Things are still gonna sound good because when you press play on a square, nothing is going to come in at the wrong time. It might come in at the wrong time creatively. Okay, so that's how we can kind of get ideas, right? We can let's add a bass guitar maybe to get some ideas. We'll open up our library by pressing Y. And let's add a Liverpool bass. And I can actually arm this track. Let's make some more space here by pressing Y, snap the library, and O to snap the loop browser. And I have my keyboard here, so I have a bass guitar. And let's just press record and record something in. So we can also just get a vibe first by pressing these. Let's do this one. Cool. Let's try this drum set. And let's say I have an idea here. Let's just test it out. That's all I wanted to do. So now I've just created this little here with my Midi, this bass line. We can take a listen. If we just want to listen to this one, we can stop them all at the bottom right here, pressing stop. And now I can just listen into the green one. The same idea as if we would record the Midi in this zone here. We can still double click and open up an editor. This is the same editor. Everything is more or less the same. And we can go in and quantize our Midi. We can add notes here. So let's say I want to quantize this, Command A, quantize by 1/16. Let's see how it works with this drum kit. And then let's see how it works with this guitar. Not great. Let's see how it works with this guitar. Not great either. How about this one? That's the one we recorded on, so I think it sounds good. So those are in different keys. And so this is where it helps to have an idea of the key you want, because I kind of played this in, I think, like a C sharp. and this is totally in a different key, so it's not sounding right. But if you still don't need to be in the same key. You can be using this kind of flexibility of clicking and choosing different groups and then seeing what feels good. We found these, so let's go with that. And because it's cool, what we're gonna do is record all of that into this right window here. And how we do that is by pressing R. You can kind of see the horizontal bars here, and then it says R. So we're gonna press R, and then we're gonna line up our cursor to where we wanna start things, and we'll just press record on our keyboard. So, or press R, sorry. So I'm gonna press R, and it's gonna come in on the right side here. So you can see it's being recorded. These loops are being recorded here. So let's say we like that as the intro, and we like that as the verse. So you can see we have our structure at the top. Now, here's where it gets really cool. If I kept going, and then I click different little squares here, it would actually start recording that in real time. Let's say maybe I didn't want the that lead at the pre. So what I can do is at this pre here is where I can just press stop on this square. So let's do that again. Delete that, bring our cursor back, record these intro and verse squares. And this is our guitar here in blue. Let's say I don't want that at the pre. So I'm gonna look at our tempo, I'm gonna press stop when it gets close. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. Okay, cool. So let's say at the chorus, I want it to come back in with this one, 3. Okay, that doesn't sound good, but you get the idea. Let's say I bring back in this one here. Let's say in the verse 2, I drop out the drums, or I click on this drum kit. Now, so you get the idea. You can quickly record in actual tracks here in our traditional view with the ideas we have in our little live loops view here. And when you're doing this, I like to do this kind of cutting things out, dropping things back in when I have my ideas that I like. So I might have multiple tracks here, and I have multiple different squares of ideas. And then I'll highlight the ideas I like in a certain color. Let's say, we can choose different colors here by opening up option C. And we can change, let's say all the colors in dark blue are my ideas I really like. And then I would come into this view and record all the ideas I really like in their appropriate sections. We can also copy and paste that bass line and open these up, double click, and just do some edits. Maybe that's another bass line we have an idea. And now we have this bass line, which is different than this one. And we can go in and edit these ones as well. That's the power of live loops. And then once you have the right ideas, get them into your traditional view and then start working on the song structure again. The next big thing that Logic did with their new update 10.5.1 was add the step sequencer. And this is really helpful. I use the step sequencer a lot for making drum beats, but you can do it for any instrument, any software instrument available. It's a new interface to make melodies. So maybe you're not comfortable on the Midi keyboard to make melodies. Well, this gives you an interface where you can do it easily with on your mouse, on your computer, or if you have an iPad or even iPhone, you can use that as a controller and kind of just click the pads on the step sequencer to make melodies that you like. Now, to get the step sequencer up, we can press E on our keyboard, and it's now located here. So we have Smart Tempo, Step Sequencer, Score, and our traditional piano roll editor that we're familiar with. So the step sequencer here is this view. And I can click into these boxes, and I can make a melody that way. And this is like more or less the same thing. For example, if I just close this down and delete this, if I quickly make a region here, I'm just going to go T and bring up my pencil tool and just make a region there. I'm going to point back to my pointer tool. if I double click, it's more or less the same way like if I drew MIDI notes in this way. It's just really a different view to do it. You can't do both at the same time. So you'll notice that because I've done these MIDI notes, I can't go to my step sequencer and start doing step sequencer now. You have to choose one or the other. You can start with step sequencer and then move it to MIDI. I do that a lot with drums. So let me give you an example with using drums so we can make a beat. Let's delete this track. Actually, we don't need to delete it. We can just delete the region. And we can change this track to a drummer track. So let's open up an electronic drum kit. Let's do an 808 flex kit. Now I'll open up the step sequencer again by pressing E and going to step sequencer. So now I have my full drum kit here. You can see the kick, the snares, all the pieces in the drum kit that the 808 flex gives you. Let's say on every maybe a kick and snare pattern like this. Maybe kick more like kick snare. Or kick like this. And we can also just work on the beat by muting our guitar. Maybe turning out the click so it's not distracting by going up here. And then I could extend the steps so that these are pattern steps here. So the bigger you go, the more room you have to make a pattern. For example, this 64 step just turned into two different views. So I have this section here. So maybe I can have another kick right here. And then the second section, see it's running through the first section here. Now it's coming into this section. Maybe if you just want to listen to this one section, we'd have to go to our top here and cycle just this second section. So this little loop here is this, and then this bar here is this one. So let's work on this second section here. See what that sounds like with the guitar. Okay, like that. Let's do the second section. Don't really like that so much. Let's have it like this. That's cool. Let's try that. We can double up on snares here and there. Let's say every second hit. So we have snare hits here. We want to add that here as well. So that's what this sounds like. And we can add claps even if we want. It's as simple as going through the sounds and just clicking where you want them to happen. And you can really level in with a step sequencer by choosing different velocities, different notes, how many times you want the notes to hit. For example, you can see here we are all in 1/16th notes. So that means that each of these squares is on a 16th note. So a good idea to visualize that is if I press my hi-hats on every square, it's going to be in 16th notes. So it's going to sound really, really fast. So let me give you an example. that's cool, right? 16th notes are really provide lots of rhythm, but if we don't want them that fast, we can drop them down here to 1/8 notes, and that's going to maybe provide just a different character to the song. Another good example with the hi-hats is the velocity. Velocities, you can use these big down arrows or these big up arrows to move the entire velocity of the hi-hat. So let's say I want to start at about 62, but I want these hits to be a little louder just to create some dynamic, so I can drag up these little individual boxes. So that would soloed, that's what this would sound like. Maybe just the drum. So it's just finding ways to create dynamic within the step sequencer. And note repeat is another option. What we can do is here, you can see on each square it says 1. We can click into the square and go up or down on our mouse. Sorry. So going up will mean in this little section here, the hi-hat will play 16 times. That's quite aggressive. We don't want that, but you might want maybe, could be something like dum 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 dum. You know, the typical kind of trap move would be kind of maybe 4 hits right here. So with everything that sounds like this, I'll have to unsolo the hi-hats. Let's say we wanted it to happen here too. We go to this hi-hat and go to 4. And we can build out our beat like that using the step sequencer, going through different elements, choosing different velocities, doing some note repeats. You can also go to this plus section here and add different options here. So we have gate, we have tie, we have note, octave, so we can go down an octave. The note, I'm not actually sure. Yeah, the note is, I guess, the pitch of the note. The tie, I don't know what the tie is, to be honest. I haven't used the tie. I really am sticking with velocity and note repeat. Now, what we can do with the step sequencer here is break down all our MIDI notes into their, or break down the step sequencer notes into its own MIDI notes and own MIDI channel. So I'll right click and go to convert to MIDI region. And now all of the nodes are in MIDI inside this one track. And I can right click again and go to MIDI, separate by note pitch, and it's just split them down into their separate tracks using MIDI. So I can again go into these MIDI tracks and change the elements here if I want to, like we would change any MIDI note. Now let's continue developing our song with this simple drum kit we made and this disco pop rhythm guitar. I'm going to rename that to guitar and going to rename this to drums. Since we've made this, I'm going to delete the Bluebird and I'm going to delete the Liverpool bass by doing Command backspace. Let's continue on here and let's move on to section 2 where we talk about plugins and virtual instruments. This is something I didn't really touch on in the last tutorial, so I will briefly mention in this one and talk about everything that Logic does give you and the quality of the instruments as well. Logic does really compete at the level of every other DAW in terms of the quality of their virtual instruments. I use a lot of the virtual instruments in all my projects actually, and on a lot of pop hit records there have been Logic stock sounds as well. The new Billie Eilish record has a lot of stock Logic synths in there as well. Let's go over some of those. The plugins and virtual instruments are all found in the inspector window. Let's add a new software instrument track to take an example. So new software instrument track, let's just call this a synth. And here is where all the action goes down. This is our main plugin window where this kind of blue pill is. And whenever we click on the right, we can go to our plugins and virtual instrument interface. So Here is where the virtual instruments lie in this blue pill, and then in this blue pill under the audio effects, this is where our plugins lie. So we can go into audio effects, and all of these are plugins. Plugins are different effects that we can add to our audio sounds. So whether that's a delay effect, distortion, dynamics, EQ, filter, imaging, metering, modulation, these are all plugins that are stock plugins that are available in Logic. So all of these ones here are all for free in Logic. When you buy a plugin, it will be available under audio units, and then here are your purchased plugins, other than the Apple packs that are also for free. You don't have to go out and buy any type of plugin to make music. They're all available for free in Logic. When you get more advanced and you get more picky with quality of the plugin, or you're looking at something very customized that Logic can't give you, that's when you have to go out and purchase a plugin. But at the beginning, you can use all these free plugins that are available. How you just get them on the chain here is by going to the plugin and pressing it. Now it's available here, and we can just continue to add plugins. You would first usually have an EQ plugin, and because an EQ plugin is so popular, Logic has made it really easy. With this EQ box here, you can just press it, and then it gives you an EQ plugin. And then this little window here is the shape of the line in here that we make. So if we cut out a lot of low end and we boost the mids or the highs, that shape will be here. So it's nice to visualize quickly what frequency shape your track has without opening up the plugin, and that's why Logic does that for you. If you're not familiar with EQ, feel free to reference another video I have on how to use EQ. I don't want to get too bogged down into all the specifics of the plugins, or else this video would be days and days long. The next plugin you would typically have could be a compressor. So Logic has dynamics compressor, and then inside this compressor there's different customized options that you can choose. And then maybe you would have some delay, some echo delay, or you could have some tape delay, very similar type of features. And then you can drag plugins up the chain. So the chain continues to grow. It does matter where your plugins are in the chain. So typically we want our EQ at the top because that's when we're filtering signals. You might ask yourself, where do I put reverb on this plugin window as well? Reverb is, well, under reverb, you have 4 different options that Logic gives you. What we're gonna do and talk about in this video is adding reverb not on the plugin window. It's okay to do that in some cases, but typically you want to bus out reverb. And so that has to do with busing, and that's a different section in this video. If you're looking for that specifically, you can locate that in the description timestamp. What about virtual instruments, and what are virtual instruments? Virtual instruments are just like, instead of having the actual hardware, physical pieces in your living room or wherever your studio is, it's just having them on the computer instead. So there are a lot of virtual instruments you can buy and just have them on your computer instead of having them in your house. There are a lot of benefits and disadvantages of doing that. So the virtual instruments are all available in this blue pill window. So I can go into, on the left-hand button, it's to click the virtual instrument off. In the middle, it's to open up that specific virtual instrument. So this is a retro synth. And then on the right side is to choose different instruments. If you pay for something, it will usually be down here where you have AU instruments. So the virtual instruments and the plugins, they are mutually exclusive. So if I click on this and go to my Alchemy synth and open up this synth, now my plugin window will remain the same. Nothing has changed here. The virtual instrument has changed, which will dramatically affect the sound of my track. Then I can go in here and choose any instrument or sound I want within the Alchemy synth. Alchemy is an enormous synth. It comes with more than 3,000 presets, instruments, and then you can also just go in and design your own sound by using the synth customization tools that Alchemy gives you. As a beginner, I would recommend just narrowing down on the category, the subcategory, the genre to choose a sound that is good for you. You can continue on and go through all the other types of instruments that Logic gives you. So for example, studio strings is a little more easy on the eyes in terms of interface, very simple. You can go through a couple of the other ones that I would recommend. The sculpture modeling synth is an instrument that is great, I find, for atmospheric sounds. I use this on some tracks with the pads, like if you want an ambient pad, for example, or a distant air pad. I typically stick with the presets when it comes to synth instruments and might do some small customizations here and there, but I'm really just going into the presets, choosing a preset that works for me, and then I move on with my kind of creative flow. The Drum Machine Designer is another one that I use quite regularly as well, and this opens up a full new interface here of different pads, and here's where you can load in different pieces of a drum kit that Logic gives you. So when I opened up that Drum Machine Designer, it opened this window and it also opened the library for me. So I can go into any electronic drum kit, choose any drum kit, and it will load in these samples for me. So for example, this 808 Flex has all the elements of the drum set inside these pads, and I can click on these pads here to get a preview, and I can actually see the waveform. I can fade this clap if I want it to be a bit smaller. Let's say I really want to cut it off like there. It can be a bit faster and snappier. So if I go to my kick, you'll notice the instrument is the Q sampler. So just like I was showing you before, here are the instruments, but this kick is actually coming from the sampler. And this is getting into the territory of using samples. So I want to save that for the next section or a couple sections down. You can just reference the timestamp in the video description. To wrap up this section, I would recommend just going in there and starting out with stock plugins that Logic gives you and the stock instruments that Logic gives you and just playing around with them. Don't worry that you have to go out and buy all these paid things. It's already overwhelming enough to use Logic when you're beginning out, and it can be just too overwhelming, and there's just too much to think about if you have to start buying things. Unless you're looking for something really specific, Logic gives you everything you need out of the box for free. Let's move on to the next section, section 3, where we're talking about using samples and importing audio from our Apple Loops browser, but also importing audio from if we downloaded sample packs from the internet, or your friend gave you a cool snare sound or a little vocal sound that you need to import into your project and use that, and you want to edit it a bit. So let's just delete this drum track by doing Command Backspace, and we'll close down our library. So we can import any type of audio file, whatever, into Logic with our file browser, and that's this icon here. We can also open it up by pressing F on our keyboard. And just like any Mac Finder window, you have your files here, and you would locate the file you want to import in, and then you would import those files. For example, I have a bookmark where I like sounds that I reference frequently. So I can go here. Let me just do maybe a snares and clap sound. So here's a clap sound that I might use sometimes. I would click and drag that in, and it's created an audio track for me with the name of the WAV file, which is phclap 909. I can rename this just clap, and then I have that in. And then if I want this sample too, or this sample, I can just continue clicking and dragging samples in like this. That's how I approach it sometimes, especially when I know I like the sample sound already and it doesn't need much editing. Sometimes those samples do need editing. You need to edit the tempo, you need to edit the key, or you want to take a certain section of the sample and use that. So let's go over how you can do this. Let's say instead of a drum sound, I want to use a female vocal ad-lib sound. So let's just say I choose any ad-lib here that I have. Let's just work with this. Might not sound great, but let's just solo this to hear what it sounds like. Now let's try to put this, which is in C minor, in the key of our track, F sharp minor. How I find the key, or how I need to know how many semitones I need to drop it, is I open up musical typing with Command K. This just gives me a view of a keyboard. I can also just look at my Midi keyboard. Now this vocal ad-lib is in C, so that's where this K value is. And my song is in F sharp, which is the T value. So I just have to count the space in between these notes, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have to drop it down 6 semitones. So how do I do that? There is a short way and a fast way. The short way, and the short way and a fast way. So there's a longer way and a short way. The short way is just clicking it and doing Option, holding down Option, then going down arrow. And then you can see this -1 have popped up. So we just dropped that by 1. Now 2, now I'm just continuing to press down. 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've dropped this down 6 semitones. The longer way to do this is clicking here and then going to our region. So this top left is really handy to do quick editing, and we'll get more into that in the editing section, but we can do a quick transpose edit. So I'm going to click this box and then just drag down. And then I can drag it down. I can pitch it by 36, go up 36, but I just want to go down 6. So that's a bit of a longer way. It's still not that long. Let's see what this sounds like now. Let's just do ad-lib, and we'll just bring that up here. Let's just lower the volume. So it doesn't sound too great, does it? Let's see if it's 6 up is better. So 6 up sounds better. It's in key. It does sound quite high still. Why it doesn't sound super great yet is because the timing of the ad-lib is not in time with our song. So now we have to change this to be in the right time. And how we can do that is, there's a couple ways. So let's do the short way right now, which is holding down Option again, but hovering over the end of our track. And we want this icon to show up with the kind of squigglies at the end of and the bracket in between. Now when we click and drag this and let go, this is going to time stretch our audio. What usually works is if you just drag it to the nearest grid and let go. Usually this works because it will set it in time with the grid. But depending on the performance of the track, sometimes you might have to stretch it more, sometimes you might have to stretch it less. So let's see what this sounds like. Let's just hear it solo for a second. And I'm just going to boost the signal up so I can see where she's singing that second note. It kind of fits with the music. It's a bit fast, so I could stretch it another bar and see what that sounds like. Let me let go. Now we've made the sample slower. That sounds better to me. And what's happening is I can zoom in. I'm going to zoom in now on this. I'm just going to now I'm going to press Command down on and make these tracks fatter. You see how the transient here on the female vocal sample starts here when it should start here. So what I'm going to do is right click, because I have my scissors on the right click. I'm just going to cut this audio. I'm going to click this, delete it, and then I'm going to bring my cursor to number 5. Click this, and then I'm going to press semicolon, and semicolon is going to snap that to number 5. I could also click and drag. It's a personal choice. And let's cut it at bar 7 and loop it 2 bars to see what that sounds like. It's pretty much in time. Because it's a vocal sample, it can be flexible, but it is still a little fast for me. So I want to hear what that sounds like. Just a little bit less, maybe like this. What I'm now is just time stretching it by a smaller amount to seeing what fits in to your taste. Let's just try a little slower. Let's roll with that one for now. So I'm going to cut it at bar 7 again. And why am I doing that? Because if I don't cut it here and loop it, it's going to start too late. So I need to make sure the loop starts right at bar 7. Then I'm going to loop it here. So now I have a little sample I've brought in. I've pitched it to the right key of our song we're building, and then I've time stretched it to fit in properly with the music. And you would go about doing it the same way with drum samples you have, whether those are hi-hat loops or other ad-lib sounds or piano sounds, guitar sounds. It's the exact same way. If it's an audio track, it works the same. If for some reason that doesn't work, you can always double click the file and go to File here, and then go to Functions, and then Time and Pitch Machine. It's important that you do know, if in this case, the original tempo of your sample. So that's really important, because you would put the original tempo in here, and then you would put the tempo you want. And that would help probably sort out any timing issue you had with your file. Let's take this sample a step further and use the quick sampler tool that Logic gives us, so we can actually have this sample on our MIDI keyboard, and we can play the sample on our MIDI keyboard with different pitch levels and use it actually as more of an instrument only than just one piece in the song. So how I would do that is, I'm going to zoom out a bit, zoom out. So I'm going to do hold command down and press up on my keyboard, and that just kind of zooms things out. I'm going to delete these tracks. We'll add a new software instrument track, but we'll go to our quick sampler. Here it is. I'm going to open up the file browser again. It will default go back to the original place it was. What I'm going to do is drag a sample in. Let's not get too picky about what these are right now. I'm going to drag this in, and it's going to give me two options. Do you want to do original, use the original tuning loudness, or do you want to optimize for tuning and loudness? I usually just go original. On my MIDI keyboard, I'm pressing notes, and you can see it actually being triggered here. And I'm not sure why I can't hear anything. Yeah, it's because things are soloed. So make sure that soloed is off. I have record. So I'm just going to say vocal sample. And I'm going to open up my Q sampler again. So if I press like C, I'm just pressing the C note on my MIDI keyboard. Now that happens. If I just press it quickly, if I hold it, it plays the whole sample. If I do C sharp, it's a pitch up. If I go to D, you can see I can play any type of pitch on my MIDI keyboard now using this exact sample. So you can kind of use it as an instrument. I can play chords too. That's a C major chord. Let's say I just wanted to use a specific piece of the sample. We would drag these and find that specific piece we like. Let's say it's this part. And we can test it out by pressing the note. Let's say we like actually this here. Or this piece here. Kind of sounds a bit funny. Maybe just that part. So let's fade it in here. Like this, maybe. Let's use that. So we can X this down, we can record, arm it, and record over what we've done here. And I'm just gonna play on my MIDI keyboard, try to find something. That wasn't recording, was it? Why wasn't that working? Oh, did I press record? I don't think I did. Something that's an idea, and you can see it's come in with MIDI notes, so I can double click on that and open my piano roll editor. Let me just close this down, and you can see that they're just MIDI notes. So I can quantize these, I can stretch them, do anything as I would with MIDI. More on MIDI editing in the next section. And quick reminder, if I feel like I'm skipping a lot of beginner things, I'm quickly talking about MIDI and opening up things, skipping some explanations on things. So I do recommend checking out that other video where I don't skip so many things. And I take more of my time explaining these things. So I could quantize this by doing Command A, quantizing. Now you can see what that sounds like in context. I'll just cycle it at the top and press spacebar. What would sound cool if I put a lot of reverb on that? So I can go to my plugin window and go down to reverb, Space Designer Reverb, for example, stereo. And let's look at the preset. So let's go to factory default here where our presets are. We can look at all the presets, large, medium, small. Let's do a big, large reverb. Let's do a indoor space, maybe a bright, a big Gothic church, an 8.7 second reverb, and bump up the wetness so it sounds really, really wet. Let's see what that sounds like. Now I'm not bussing out this reverb, so keep that in mind right now. That's how we would use samples quickly, loading them in and programming them quickly on our keyboard so we can use them as an instrument. Let's move on to section 4 of this video now, where we talk about editing audio and MIDI with using the available tools that Logic gives you. And I do want to reference these tools at the top. By default, you would probably only see 2 tools available here. I've added a third tool because I've made it my right click tool. And you can do this as well if you open up settings, Command comma, and do so under general, under editing, you can go to right mouse button is assignable to a tool. You can make it open the tools menu. You can make it open a shortcut menu. It really is more of a workflow comfort thing. I like to have my right click as the scissors. I've just got used to that. These same tools are available in the piano editor window. So if I open up this vocal sample editor by double clicking or pressing E, I'll have this similar 3 tools here as well. So they're mutually exclusive, right? You can have like, yeah, the pencil here is different than I have a marquee right here. Get used to using these tools because these are the tools that help you edit audio and edit MIDI. Let's briefly go over some of these tools that I find are really valuable when it comes to editing. I always have the pointer tool by default because I'm clicking things and dragging them and just clicking on things. For example, if you have the text tool by default and you click on an audio and drag it, you just can't do that. And that's really frustrating. So I have the pointer tool on, and let me just close down the editor. E. Whenever you want to bring up the toolbar menu, just press T on your keyboard, and that will bring up the tool menu wherever your mouse is located. So if your mouse is located over here, press T, it's going to happen there. If it's over here, you press T, it's going to happen over here. And this is really handy because you can just press T and then just scroll quickly down to what you want your default tool to be. So T, scissors, T, zoom, T, back to pointer. And once you get the muscle memory of like the distance between those, you can get there pretty quickly. You can also do that by doing T, and then it gives you the shortcuts here to go back. So if you know for a fact you had it on, let's say, fade tool, and you want to quickly get it back to the pointer tool, you would press T, T, right? Because it says T here. So T, T. If I do T, P, I have my pointer tool now. If I do T, G, you get the idea. This second tool is by default available with the Option key. So by holding Option, this tool just becomes quickly available. So you can imagine while you're editing audio, you have one tool in your pointer click, on your left click, you have your Option ready to go with like holding your thumb on your Option key, and then you have a right click ready to go. The biggest thing I find is scissors, because it's important to cut things, pointer, because you're moving things around a lot. Fading is great when you're in that stage of crossfading audio tracks together, or maybe you're going through your whole song and applying crossfades or fading tracks in and out. Pencil tool, I'm going kind of TP really quickly, and then I'll click to make regions and then go back to TT, so I can then double click in. And now in this tool bar menu, okay, I'll go a bit slower. So if I would do TP, create a region, and then go TT, now I have this region ready to go. So I quickly want to add another vocal sample, right? Let's do this in context. So let's say we chop it here and we only have this section. So I want something else here for my vocal sample. I'm gonna go TP, create a region. I can extend that region, double click in. Now I'm in this piano editor and I can use these tools available. By default, I have the pencil as my option, so then I can just quickly press Option and draw something in. And then as my third tool, I have it as the velocity tool, because when I'm just putting notes in at like random like this, or using the pencil tool, it gives a default velocity of 100. You can see all these notes have a velocity of 100. So I would right click on my mouse and then just drag down. Sorry, that's super annoying. And just let me take the preview off here, but this paint tool, now I won't be able to hear them when I click them. So I can just click and drag down, and that will change the velocity quickly. So you can just be like, click, drag, click, drag, click, drag up, click, drag down. And that helps create dynamic really quickly if you're using the pencil tool to draw notes in. Another thing when it comes to editing MIDI and audio is really use the available grid that you have. Using the grid and lining things up to the grid will help you copy and paste different tracks to different sections, but it will also help you loop things. For example, this little section here, I kind of have this piece here and then this little piece and this empty section. With MIDI, you can just extend whatever section you have to the nearest grid wherever you'd like. Now it's more even here, and then I could also highlight these two tracks and press Command J, and that will merge those tracks and make one together. Now I have this one track that I can click and drag or hold Option with my mouse, then click and drag, and then make a copy of it like that. And that makes it really easy to line things up. We have two home bases really where we can edit audio and MIDI, and it's the same thing. So let's do this audio track here. Under track, we have where we can see our audio track in more detail, and then this is our home base to edit the audio as it is for our MIDI. Inside audio, it's just called track. And inside MIDI, it's called a piano roll. These are your home bases. The piano roll is your home base to edit MIDI. And then in audio, it's track. And this is where we can apply flex time and actually change the pitch, and we can dive deeper into the timing of our audio. I'm not going to get into flex time in this video. I'm going to save that for another video. The same things apply to the audio track as it did the MIDI. So when we MIDI, we had our tools here. In the audio, we have 3 more mutually exclusive tools where we can cut and delete audio, drag audio, pitch audio. When I'm dealing with audio, usually the things I'm doing the most is just cutting different pieces of audio. For example, if I just want to cut this section out, I just did right click and scissors, and then I would delete that. And maybe I would change it to like a fader tool, and then I would fade that. And I could fade this too. Or I could just crossfade them and match them, line them up, and bring my fader tool back. So T, fade, and just do like a crossfade here. And then you can edit the crossfade if you don't want it to be that big. Now your other home base, I'm just going to Command Z that because I did like kind of where it was. The other home bases for editing audio and MIDI would be your region inspector. We briefly touched on this. So inside the region is up at the top left here, is where we can get a brief kind of synopsis of some of the data on our track. So we could mute this little region, and it's only applying to what you have highlighted. It's not going to affect anything. For example, if I made a quick copy of this, and let's say this was down here, now I have 2 regions. So this region will have its own data, so I can mute this region, and then this region, I can come up here, and then it will have its own data as well. So mutes, a popular thing sometimes if you have a section of the song where you're not sure about that song yet and you don't want to completely delete it, you can just go up to region and mute it. You can also do Control M, and that will mute that region. You can quantize audio in here as well. This is flex time, and we'll get into that in another video. You can transpose audio when we already did that with this region by clicking and dragging up and down to transpose the audio. You can fine tune it if you find it's just a little bit out of pitch, maybe too sharp or too flat. And then this is flex time. The gain is a thing I'm using a lot on certain regions. Say this for simplicity purposes, let's do a cut here. And this section, this region here, let's say it was actually just way too loud in our sample. Then we can just turn the gain down. So because I've made a cut and now highlighted a new region here, it's given me a full new region kind of metadata here. So I can click on gain and then drag down, and you can see that signal there. Look at it just decrease all the way. I'm bumping it down negative 16.7 dB. I could also do the same thing if it was too quiet, and I can bump that up. This is really helpful when you're editing editing vocals sometimes, and you just want to do a bit of gain leveling. You can quickly do some cuts and bump up the gain by clicking in and dragging up and down. That really is something I'm doing a lot on things. And then fade ins, fade outs, similar clicking and dragging on regions. So you can see right here, when I click and drag up, see that fader come in? So if I can do it 10,000, you'll really see it. Kind of a huge fade in. And then I can do a fade out at the end of the region. 10,000 as well. Or wow, that was, 10,000. So you never do like a huge fade like that, but you get the idea. You might come in here and just do 100 on each end. Sometimes you barely see it here, but if we zoom in and really get an image of how much you're fading. Another thing is this reverse. A reverse can be really a great production tool to add some drama or some, I guess, dramatic tension to a chorus where you have a reverse of something leading into the chorus. And this is popular in dance music, or like a sweep into a chorus. I'll show you how to do that. If we solo this track here, let's just cut this and let's move it to a new track. So let's create a new track here, a duplicate of this track. We go Command D, and then I'm just going to drag, make a copy. So hold Option and hold my mouse and then drag it down and then let go of my mouse. Now I have a copy of that file. So I have a separate region here where I can go over and now reverse this. And you'll see it's just completely kind of flipped, reverse the audio signal. And so this is what this sounds like. So this little part here, it's a nice lead in. So I can cut it right there. I like that. So I'm just going to delete this. It comes in at bar 5. And I'm going to drag it to bar 5. So if I just cycle out a bit and now solo both these tracks, in context it will sound like this. And I can also have that, maybe if I don't want to fade in so much, I can cut it here. I can do a fade, so I can go here. Fading, you can do it multiple different ways. I could just bring up the fade tool by doing T fade and then do like a big fade into the kind of, let's say this is the chorus, so here. Or I can just go over here and you see it created that 366 fade. If I found that too big, I can just drop that down to 100. I mean, looking out now, it doesn't sound too great, does it? So I'm just going to mute those. I don't really like the sound of them right now. We'll come back to that while we kind of put things together for the song. Okay, let's move on to section 5 now of the video. I want to touch on busing and I want to touch on outputs as well. Why you might want to bus reverb, for example, for beginners, and what you kind of need to keep in mind with using outputs. So let's dive into busing first. Let's take the idea of our vocal sample here because we've created a Space Designer reverb on the track already. What we want to do is change this Space Designer reverb into a bus reverb instead of a reverb on the track. So let's create that first, then we'll explain why we do that. So let's just remove this plugin. Creating buses happen to be under the sends or stereo output. And now I'm going to open up my mixer and show you what I mean by this. Okay, so Command 2 to open up a mixer. And this is all the tracks that are happening in our session right now. We have a guitar, we have drums, we have these ad-lib tracks, we have our vocal sample. Now this small verb, church, ambience, small hall, drums, stereo out, and master. These tracks here that I've highlighted, these are all bus outputs, and you can notice that because they were given these yellow icons, and these are aux tracks. So these are tracks that I've created that you can add different effects on, and then you can like go to any of your tracks in your session, and you can send signal, like a certain percentage of signal, to one of these tracks. So for example, this is the track we're going to have our reverb on. I'm just going to remove this paid plugin and add a Space Designer reverb. I'll show you how to create this in a second, but I just want to explain the kind of theory behind this. So on this track, we have our Space Designer. And over on our vocal sample track, which is here, we're going to send a percentage of this vocal signal to this yellow aux track, which is also a bus track. So how we do that is, now I'm going to go back to the inspector window and show you how to do that. But it's nice to visualize what's going on here. And then these tracks you can see are going to this track, the stereo out track. Now let's go back to our inspector window on the vocal sample, and I'll show you, first of all, how we can create a bus from scratch on the inspector window. We would go to our sends and we would go to bus. And inside bus, we have all these empty buses. Bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, bus 6, and bus 7 are taken. And that's what was happening on our mixer window. You see how we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let me go to my mixer window. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I want to create a new bus, I can go sends bus 5 because it's empty. There's no writing here. And now I just created this track here. And it says aux 6 at the bottom. So let's call this reverb. Okay, and now let's go back to our mixer window, command 2. Now we can see that we've created this reverb track. It has nothing on it yet. Okay, that's all I want to show you with the mixer window. Now let's do everything in the inspector. On our aux track, our reverb track we've created, bus 5, we can add the space designer. So let's add the space designer. And here we would choose the reverb we like. Let's just use a preset. Let's do the same preset we had because it was cool. It was the big Gothic church. When I play my track here, nothing's going to happen. There's going to be no reverb added yet because I haven't sent anything to the track. I haven't put any people on the bus yet. I got to put people on the bus so I can drive to the reverb track and drop the kids off at the reverb track. You can kind of think of it like that. So I have to go to this bus here that says bus 5 on the vocal sample, and then click and drag up. And now once the circle is full, that means I've put all the signal plus more to say, hey, go to the reverb track. That's going to have way too much reverb. I might tail that back to maybe negative 12.6. The idea though is you choose how much you want based on how it fits with your song. And if you don't like the reverb you've chosen, go into this reverb that you originally clicked, and you can also edit the reverb. But the idea here of using buses and why we want to use buses is because it helps us organize our session. It also helps us save on CPU power because I don't want to add the same plugins on every single track. Sometimes you're using plugins that you want on all tracks. These are reverbs that I've already added. I have one in my session always that has a small reverb, and then I have one that always has a big reverb. So because I know bus 1 is small reverb always in every session, and bus 2 is always a big reverb. And let's say I'm recording a vocal or I'm recording a guitar. This is what will save you time. Let's say you have this guitar loop at the top, and you want to add a big reverb to it. You know that in bus 2, if I go to my guitar track and go to this little thing, go bus 2, I know that I can add a big reverb here. And that just saves time, but it also saves your computer power. Let's move on to section 7 now, where we talk about common mistakes that amateurs make when you're just starting out with Logic. And I find myself, I'm still making tons of mistakes. I'm by no means an expert in this. I'm learning just like you're learning, trying to get better at Logic and trying to get better at music production, songwriting. But there are some things, if you're just starting out, that you can avoid that I hope to clear up in this section. So the first thing would be reverb, and it's a segue to what we were talking about with adding buses. It's just adding too much reverb. The first time you hear reverb, it sounds really cool when you add reverb to tracks. But one thing reverb can do is really also make your track sound really messy. So try to use tasteful amount of reverbs. A great way to know how much reverb you should use on a track is listen to reference tracks. Listen to the favorite song or a vibe of the song you're trying to create and listen to what they're doing. Try to recreate the same reverbs that they're creating. And this will be difficult at first because it's hard to train your ear to listen for a reverb. But try your best, and over time, your ear will improve. The second mistake that I found myself running into a lot at the beginning of when I started music production was not choosing your tempo or key fast enough while you're in that creative phase. Like I was saying, don't create those hurdles for you at the beginning, but I did find when you just choose something and move on from that, so you're not always falling back on not knowing anything. So choose a tempo pretty quickly, try to get a key going, lock those things into Logic, and then just pile ideas down. Don't get too overwhelmed with how good the ideas are. Try to remove yourself from those exhaustive kind of loops that you find yourself in of creating something that you don't complete. So if you find yourself in that loop, just get out of it and then do something different. A lot of the songs that I've made in Logic have come out of completely different ideas. I've scrapped something, brought in a new loop, started a new drum pattern, maybe played something differently on the keys. It's constantly not getting hung up with what you're doing, but just trying to keep moving. Another mistake I was not doing at the beginning I didn't leverage the tools that Logic was giving me, and I just found workarounds. For example, like I was just using my pointer tool for everything, not taking the time to invest like an afternoon to learn the tools that Logic gives you that will make your sessions more productive. Because it is a pain when you're creating something and that the tool is a hurdle for you. As soon as you can use the tool to help you create, that's when really things start getting fun. So I would invest an afternoon, a day to learn those boring things about the tools, about Logic, like the tools, how to cut audio and transpose and shift audio. That's going to really help you be creative, but it's really hard to do in the moment while you're creating. And hey, you're doing it right now if you've made it this far in the video and you're watching me talk about it, so congratulations. Let's move on to the next section right now, section 7, where I just want to talk about some cool effects or plugins that are available stock for free in Logic that you can use in your mixes. So the first one is pitch, and we can find different pitch dynamics to use on anything in audio or Midi inside Logic under our plugin section. So let's use let's bring in an audio loop, for example, just so we can pitch audio, and we'll play with that with our guitar. So let's go to this orange button here and go to, let's say, instrument, vocals. Genre doesn't matter too much. Let's just try this. I'm not sure if this is going to work, and I'll show you what I mean by pitch. So inside our plugins, we can go to plugins, pitch. So we have pitch correction, pitch shifter, and vocal transformer. So pitch correction is autotune. And because this is an Apple audio loop, it's perfectly in tune. But how you would use this, let's say this is your voice here, you have to choose a scale. So let's say you're singing in the major scale. Okay, let's say you're doing D sharp major. Then autotune is now on. This is pretty much the only button you'll have to, or slider you'll have to use. The faster response time, the more robotic it will sound. So it should work on this. It's trying to actually pitch a piece of audio that's already in tune. So it's not working really well. The idea is if you want to sound like your voice has more auto-tune, then just create a faster response. The next pitch thing is pitch shifter. And so this just completely shifts the pitch of your voice. If I want to pitch that down 12 semitones to make it sound really low, let's see what that sounds like. So that did a low pitch. And you can still hear there's kind of aspects of the original vocal in there. And that's because the mix is at 25%. So if I did the mix to 100%, that means I want the whole signal to be pitched down, and I only want to hear the pitch. So it's almost too low, right? So maybe I might want to not have that complete mix. And you can also do it like, let's say this is your lead vocal. Let's duplicate this track, Command D, and bring this track down. Let's say up here on our lead vocal, we don't have any pitch correction at all, so no plugin. But on this second track here, we want it to be completely pitched with 100% mix. And then we can lower the fader. So we're kind of saying like, hey, on our lead vocal, we just want a normal, fresh. We want to have it like we would be actually singing with our real voice, but then we want a track behind it that's totally pitched, and we'll just lower the volume so it sits below that. So let's hear what this sounds like. Let's now look at a different pitch, which is the vocal transformer. And this is just kind of makes your, I'm just going to turn the pitch shifter off. This makes your vocal like a robot. So let's listen to this. Increase the volume. So those are the big pitch tools that I think are cool effects that you can find room for your productions or to make things jump out in your songs a bit. The next big one is automation. And this is a huge topic, but I wanted to briefly mention this because I didn't mention in that previous Logic tutorial that can be a great thing to add for beginners and intermediates to your tracks to create dynamic. Automation means you can automate something over time. So, for example, if we want to do hands off, let's say between bar 5 and bar 9, we want the guitar to slowly get louder, or we want the guitar over time to slowly have more low end or high end. So that would be an EQ automation. So we can automate anything in Logic, pretty much anything. All I want to touch on right now is EQ automation and volume automation. To open up our automation interface, we're going to press A on our keyboard. And this will make it look kind of like this, grayed out. This is where we program our automation in. And it sounds like, oh, programming, do you have to code or anything? And no, you don't. It's not super hard. So what we do is, how to choose the automation are these drop-down boxes here on every track. And by default, they all say volume, because volume is the most popular automation you can do. In order to actually start the automation, we have to click into the track that we want the automation on. So for example, our guitar. So click in, and now it's created this line for me. If I drag this line up and down, it's moving my volume here, right? This fader and this fader below. I want to just start down here. And I'm just going to click some dots. I'm going to click the lines, and this creates dots. You can also click the dots again and press backspace to delete them. But basically, it's kind of just like using paint. Like you click the dot in, and then you drag the dot to where you want it to go. And then let's say I don't want it such a big slope. Put another dot in, and just draw a bit of a curve. You can also, I'll show you now, what this tool is up here is a curve tool. So the automation curve tool you see before, what the heck is that? Well, that's actually using it. I'll put it on my command tool. So now I have to hold command, and now I can curve this line. I can do crazy S curves. I can do general curve. So one thing I can do is just click these dots, delete them, go back to where I was with this one, press command, and just do like a huge slope. Maybe I want it to start here too. I don't want an S, so maybe like that. So let's hear what that sounds like if I just solo the guitar. So the second piece of automation I wanted to show you is an EQ automation. Now we have to go and find where EQ is in this dropdown. And so I can click on this dropdown, and under automation, we have all these available automations. On every track, you'll have smart controls, volume, and main. And then you'll have a list of numbers here. So these numbers correspond to whatever plugins you have on the track. So I have one compressor, 2 channel EQ. And that's because over here, I have compressor and a channel EQ. So for example, on my audio 4 track here, I have a compressor, a channel EQ, and a pitch shifter. So if I go to drop down, I have a compressor, channel EQ, and a pitch shifter. See, I can even automate, for example, the pitch shifter. So let's go back to our guitar, and we'll go to our channel EQ, and we'll do something called a high cut frequency. And you've probably heard this type of automation before. I'll just click in, and then I'll find a frequency, and I'll show you what this is like in action. I'm going to click our EQ box here, this little thing. This is our EQ window. Now I'm going to turn on the high cut. As I drag this down, it covers all the signal. As you drag it up, it makes room for more signal. So what I want to do is create a dynamic where the guitar is kind of quiet and then really becomes louder. It's almost like a volume automation, but not. I'm just going to go back to my volume. See, I've used volume automation and channel high EQ automation. So I'm going to go back to my volume, and I'm just going to delete this automation for now. So right click so we can really focus in, delete visible automation. I just really want to focus in on the sound of this high cut. So here's what this sounds like in context, and watch the signals coming in here. So it actually didn't get louder. It was, it technically did get louder, but the volume didn't change. It's just because I was hiding all these signals at this area, and then over time I was bringing that fader up. So we could also just press Command because we have our fader tool here, just create more of a kind of a slow curve there. So that would be an EQ automation. Let's move on to the next section of the video and just put a bit of the things that we've learned in this tutorial so far into practice by making a bit of a song. So how I want to get out of this automation is I can always just press A and it comes back to this view. Now I'm just going to zoom out by holding Option and pressing up on my keyboard, and then I'm going to hold Option and press the left arrow. That just gives me a better view of like what I'm working with right now. If I'm going to put in things into practice of what we learned so far, let's say I want this disco trance lead as the main piece of my song, right? Let's say I'm not super feeling creative today, and I'm just going to loop that for the full song. And I'm going to have that song stop at around this bar. And then I'm going to have my beat come in, let's say, the chorus. So I'm actually going to drag this to the chorus, and then I can drop this down, and I'm going to move the tracks up just so you can see them a bit better of the tracks I used at least. Oops. And I'm going to loop them, highlight them all and loop them, and then I'm going to make copies of them to the second chorus and third chorus. So I'm going to click and drag, holding Option with my mouse. Sorry, do that again. Holding Option with my mouse, click and drag, and then I'm making copies. So now I have 3 choruses, and let's say I want these vocal samples also. In the choruses, I'm going to create sections like this. So let's just take a listen out, and we'll do a quick leveling mix of things. So you can see that guitar is still underwater because we have that automation on. So that doesn't sound good. These vocal samples, I don't really like those. Right? I'm just going to drag them to the bottom right now. This one, however, sounds pretty cool here. I can pan that off a bit if I want. Maybe I can have that actually, this little part kind of sounds like a transition sample into something new. So I might have that come in right here. And it sounds like the drums. I feel like it's just too long of an intro. So what I might do is drop down. I might just remove this pre entirely, and I might highlight all these. Oops. Click that shift and click all these and just drag them over. Now I'll snap that up, And on this cursor, I kind of want my drums to come in. I'm going to drag in these drums over too. So let's see where our guitar is coming in with the automation, probably pressing A. Yes, it's coming right in on our chorus here. Okay, so let's hear what that sounds like coming in. Now the guitar sounds really fierce, kind of loud and upfront, and that's because earlier we added all this reverb to it. So I'm going to take that off now, and I might keep a bit of that bus 2, which is the big reverb. So that sounds already a lot better. I'm going to increase the drums. Because the guitar is so high, we would want to add a bass guitar, so we could go to track, new software instrument track, and let's find maybe using the sculpture synth, let's find a bass guitar, modeled bass. So let's just go through some of the presets here and click our MIDI keyboard, and then we can click our left arrow, so then we can go to the next one here if we don't like that one. Don't like that one at all. Let's see what else we have. A sub bass. Let's just use this sub bass for now. You can never go wrong with the sub bass. I'm just going to record starting at the cursor here and just add a little bass line with my MIDI keyboard. Don't really like that, but I'm going to edit it now in my MIDI. I'm going to double click on this. I played a wrong note at the beginning, so I'm going to click that and delete it. And I'm going to drag this note over because I wanted to play that first. I can solo it just to hear what things sound like. So it's a bit off time. I can quantize that. So I will quantize by doing Command A. 1/16 should be fine. Let's listen to it with the drums. I don't like the high notes that pop out. The velocity is a little high, so I can, because I had the velocity tool on my right click, I can right click and then bring that down. And what might be cool is to actually add an arpeggiator with this bass. So what we can do is go to our MIDI effects. Now, we didn't really go over this, but why not right now? I'll just click on MIDI effects and go to an arpeggiator. And as soon as I play my bass guitar now, if I just solo this, it's going to sound, you know, like an arpeggiator. This is happening at 1/16, so I might want to do 1/8, and this is what 1/8 sounds like. So that's sounds a bit better to me. Let's hear that with the drums. Maybe that would sound better if it was lower. I need the preview again, so I'm going to go up here. So I see what this sounds like. That sounds cooler to me, and I can loop it here. And I can also make copies here like this. So with the guitar, That's how I would go about creating a song, and just not worrying about what like the sounds are or how good it sounds. Like, don't let your kind of lizard brain tell you how bad it is at the beginning, even though, yeah, okay, this isn't the best song right now, but it's important just to keep moving. So maybe with this Logic session, you can use this as a foundation to take the next step on something you're working on, or try to bring in a sample that you're using, or bring in some Apple loops and make it work with this drum, bass, and guitar foundation that we've built here. So please let me know what you think of this video in a comment. I'd be happy to help, and I'm really excited to do more Logic Pro X tutorials in 2021. Feel free to subscribe and have a listen to some of my own music. I'm curious to know what you think about it. You can let me know in a comment as well, and I hope to see you in the next video.